welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we are going to invite all of you who have served at Fort Monroe, lived at Fort Monroe, worked at Fort Monroe, to a really special event to honor its history and to benefit the Casemate Museum. My guest is Dennis Mroczkowski. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, tell us how this came about, because this is really unusual. This is like an all-class reunion. Those don't happen very often.
Well, that's exactly what we're calling it, is a reunion day. And the reason for that is because we recognize that there were many, indeed thousands of people who have worked at Fort Monroe in various ways. They might have been military, they might have been civilian, they might have been contractors. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are so many people who were there as dependents.
Right.
As well.
Spouses, children. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people who grew up there, their formative years. So it made a big impression on a lot of people.
It did, and a lot of people came to really love the fort, not just because of the fact that it is such a fine location, but also because it's got such a very deep, interesting, and important history to the nation.
Right. So tell us when this is.
Okay, it's going to be in September, and it's going to be on September 15th. And that is the 6th anniversary of the final closing of the fort by the Army. So we figure that's rather an important date.
Yeah,
that's when we'll be holding that.
That is very special. So you are doing this partly to get people back together and to share the memories and the history, but the real reason is to work up some benefits for the Casemate Museum.
That's right. The Casemate Museum is still open, it's still there, it's still preserving and interpreting and exhibiting the history of the fort, which of course goes all the way back to 1609, although not Fort Monroe specifically. Mm-hmm. It's still the history of that area.
The piece of land, yes.
That's right, and that's still there. It's still open for the public. People should be coming and learning about what has happened out in that area, because it is important to the history of not just the local area, but the nation itself. And we, as the Casemate Museum Foundation, support the museum. We provide funds for exhibits, we provide funds for other projects that the museum staff otherwise may not have quick and immediate access to.
So this is complicated because I think, people from more than 6 years ago know the Casemate Museum as, well, the Army takes care of that. We don't need to donate because, it's covered. And that's not so much the case anymore.
It's not so much the case anymore, and it never really was entirely the case. Because even when the Army ran Fort Monroe, and therefore had responsibility for the Casemate Museum, there was still a foundation. There was a Casemate Foundation at that time.
There were always volunteers. There were always volunteer docents. I know
That's right.
that, yeah.
That's right. There were always volunteer docents, but the Casemate Museum Foundation played a different role, providing additional funding even at that time. Because, let's face it, the appropriated funds of the federal government didn't always meet everything that we needed.
Right. With hope they're taking care of things, but that isn't the same thing as giving us all access and interpreting things and, making new signs and even
acquiring new artifacts and so forth. That's right. So all of that requires funding, and not all of that is necessarily available in an appropriated fund budget, whether you're talking about the federal government, the state, the city, whatever. And so that's where we come in. We help to provide those additional funds. So how does that tie in with what we're doing? Quite simply, number one, the purpose of this reunion is to bring people together, definitely, to have a good time, to meet old acquaintances, renew friendships and so forth. That's, I think, is important, just like any reunion. You were saying high school or college.
Sure.
That's good. But in addition to that, we want people to recognize the fact that the fort is still a living, thriving community of people. It is open to the public to come in. The museum is still there. As I said, it's still preserving and exhibiting that history. People should be going to the museum. And if they're going to the museum, of course, needs support from the state, which it does get, but also from us within the Casemate Museum Foundation. So what we're hoping is that as people see the museum, recognize its continuity, and understand that by becoming a member of the foundation, that they will be able to continue to help support the museum in its needs, then we're going to get benefit from that. That brings up a point.
See, that's just like when I go to my college reunion and they remind me that I should be contributing.
That's right.
So that I can help other students the way the foundation and the endowment helped me as a student.
Exactly, exactly.
Keep
All
those
those
connections
things that we
alive.
remember so well from our time at the fort, it's still there. And so we're going to be looking for people, hopefully, to step up and become a member of the foundation. Now, in that regard, we're asking for $10 for people who are not members of the foundation currently. That's a
so if you
small
join-
cost.
Yeah, that's
But
a
if
very
you
small
are a
cost.
member of the foundation, then then it's, shall we say, free. Of course, you've already paid your
Right.
$25 membership, and that's all that it is, $25 to be a member of the foundation for a year. If you do come in paying your $10, if you would like to forward that $10 in addition to a membership, you're entitled to do that. So an additional $25 would buy you a membership, and then you come. So that's how we're working. Now, in that regard, what's going to be happening is we're going to start off at the Chapel of the Centurion, where
beautiful.
it's a beautiful place, very historic in itself. And we will be having speakers from the Fort Monroe Authority come in and talk about what is happening at the fort, what the future plans are for the fort, so that people understand again what it is that's going on.
Right, and who's doing it? I think there's so much confusion among the public about what the Army owns, which is really at the end. I mean, that's pretty much been transferred. What the federal Park Service owns, what the state owns. People still think the city owns land out there. We don't. We
Right.
lease some of the space to do public programming at the beaches and the community center, but people really don't know, I think, exactly what the arrangement is out there.
That's right, and that's why I think this is an important thing. There are people who are interested in finding that out. We already know that from some of the people who have been contacting us. So we've thought that this would be a good opportunity to put that word out to these interested people who will be showing up. After that, we will have a reception in the museum, again, for people to mingle, to reacquaint themselves with others, basically to have a good time, just like at a school reunion.
That's right.
Now, the point there is space, of course, is going to be limited for this. So we're figuring that we will probably have to limit this to about 200
Okay.
people. So if people contact us early on, so much the better.
So you really do need people to register because there's a limit on how many people you can reach. And some people will be coming in from out of town, and they hopefully will be planning far ahead, and the
That's right.
locals might forget.
That's right.
We need to warn them.
And what we're hoping is that this will be a big success, and then we might be able to increase it for next year, change things around a little bit, maybe do it in I wouldn't say a different venue because we're still talking about Fort Monroe.
Somewhere at Fort Monroe. Could be
But-
different places, but yeah.
Do it in a way that we might be able to accommodate more people if we find that that's how it's succeeding. And I think that would be quite good. Important for people who might be listening to this to know is how to contact us.
Right?
And what they could do if they're interested is just send a letter, and along with perhaps a check for
Oh,
their
so you want the real
$10.
letter. You want that written down. Okay.
That's right. And the address for that is 2020 Bernard Road, Bernard, and that, of course, is Fort Monroe, Virginia, 23651 for the zip code.
Okay.
To the attention of Nancy O'Malley, O''Malley. And the reason for that is she is our treasurer, and she's the one who's going to be taking the funds and ensuring the registration of people.
Letting people know that their registration has been received and that they're registered.
Correct.
Okay. Now, a lot of us have a little trouble with the longhand writing, you're going to give me an email address too. And we're going to put this on hampton.gov/events. You can search for Fort Monroe Reunion. We'll be able to get people who aren't writing this down as we speak. But tell us the email address if people would prefer to contact you that way.
Okay, again, that would be to Nancy O'Malley, and that would be N.S. O'Malley. That's NSOMALLEY at Verizon.net.
Okay, that's great. I think too, this is obviously serving the casemate and reconnecting people with a place that was important in their lives in different ways, I'm sure, but the place, there's such a sense of place there. The other thing it could possibly do is reconnect people with that place, which the state is making more housing units available. I mean, I think what they have right now is full. I know people who were on a waiting list for a little bit to get in, but as they continue to renovate and reshape the buildings that are out there, some of them are commercial because they were commercial for the federal government before, but there are more housing units. We do want to continue to grow what's going on out there. So many former people might care enough, former people who served or worked there might care enough about coming back. A lot of military retirees are entrepreneurs. They start a second business, they have a career, or they're looking for a place to settle down and, live out their active retirement. So we're thrilled that they're coming back to Hampton and to Fort Monroe and see what we are now, because the city has changed a lot probably since some of them were here.
Oh, I'm sure that it has. And Fort Monroe hasn't really changed that much. I mean, physically it looks very much the same. As you say, there is that...
Except there probably wasn't a brew pub there when when the Army was there.
No, but that was the Officers Club.
There was, that's true.
That's right.
And that's now the Paradise Ocean Club,
that's right.
Which is a fabulous place, even in September. I hope they'll be open. And there's the Dead Rises there. There's a wonderful seafood restaurant.
That's right, down by the marina and so forth. Yeah, so there's a lot to see and do and places to go. It's very fine, even if you just want to come in and walk around. That was always one of my favorite things to do when I would work there. My lunch hours very often were just spent walking along the seawall or out along the ramparts.
The seawall is beautiful, and certainly, I don't know if this is unique for Army bases. It certainly seemed to me, but the pet cemetery and the memories, that are there and that are so personal.
The pet cemetery is still there. I don't know if it's still active, if there's still...
I think they stopped. I think they stopped, but people can go back and remember that, moment of their childhood, that pet, their lifestyle here.
Actually, it was the Army stopped that. Whether or not the state wants to start it up again might be up to them. It wasn't that they ran out of room. What they found out, kind of a sidebar topic here, but there were several pet cemeteries within the Army, and the Army came to the realization that appropriated funds were being spent taking care of these. So what they said was, we can't continue that practice, so they stopped those pet cemeteries. But as people walk the ramparts, they'll still see.
It really adds a touch. You think about the fortress and the military and protecting and defense, and then you see some of those touches and think about people's lives who lived and served there, and their children who grew up there, and it makes it wonderful. So Dennis, I'm going to ask you, what is your story at Fort Monroe? What did you do there, and why do you continue to serve as a volunteer for the Casemate?
Well, for over 20 years, getting on towards 21 years, I was the director of the museum. So I've got a very deep interest and love for Fort Monroe and for the museum and for its collections. I had a very fine time there. I worked with some of the best people that I had ever known throughout my career, which existed with both the Marine Corps and the Army for well over 40 years, both as an historian and as a museum director. And it is just a very, very special place. And so after I retired from the Army as a civilian and continued living in this area, when I was asked to join the Casemate Museum Foundation as one of its members, I readily accepted because I recognized how much support we had received from the Casemate Museum Foundation back when I was there under the Army. That's right. I understood how important that was. And so now I've continued with that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. It's been a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for watching. I hope if Fort Monroe is a special place to you, you'll consider this. And if you can't come, consider joining the Museum Foundation and sending them a check of support. Thanks for watching.